Welcome all, Adam Kruk. Welcome on the second part of our meeting. We're starting two parallel sessions. This very one is dedicated to accessibility. And let me just remind you that DiverCITY4, Polish-Norwegian cooperation in the field of creating modern development solution in cities, benefits from €300,000 grant from Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway through the EEA and Norway grants. The initiative aims to identify the most effective solutions and create a cooperation network as well as exchange experience between Polish self-governments and the donor states, with particular emphasis on the subject of social participation in urban renewal and improvement of the urban environment. Let me just remind you that we are still under ongoing COVID pandemic, so you are very invited to disinfect your hands, to wear face mask, and keep the social distancing. This panel, Accessibility, will be held by Ms. Barbara Bożymowska, who's here with us, engineer, architecture, accessibility thematic leader, expert without barriers office, municipality of Wrocław, and I welcome Barbara to invite our guests, our expert, who will be joining us online.
Dzień dobry Państwu i dzień dobry moim ekspertom. Dzień dobry Państwu.
Hello everyone.
Tutaj na sali, tym, którzy oglądają nas online. No i dzień dobry wszystkim ekspertom, z którymi wspólnie tworzyliśmy ten panel. Dzień dobry Ony, Ada and Buster.
Welcome.
Już możemy, rozumiem, zaczynać
nasz I understand we can start the workshop. So
ekspertami jest pani Małgorzata Gorący, która jest nieobecna.
Ms. Małgorzata Gorący, who is not with us, and let me just say a few words. The slides that she was to present, I'm going to read them. She provided me with the content, but due to some serious sickness, she can't be here with us. Moving on, Ms. Adrianna Niedoszewska, a Polish expert from the national, from the PFRON, Ms. Oni Einhaug and Mr. Buster Skiet from Norway, both from Norway. Welcome.
Taką generalną, główną potrzebą,
the general need that we'll feel in terms of accessibility is to improve access to public space through changes introduced in urban infrastructure, including housing, public transport, workplaces, and also commercial and cultural facilities. What we do have at our disposal, legal framework that is a general base for solutions related to accessibility, standards for the accessibility of urban and public spaces for people with special needs, as well as financial resources that allow us to increase the accessibility of people with physical, sensory, intellectual disabilities, or with autism spectrum.
Ujednolicona konstrukcja prawna jest bardzo istotna, która będzie brała pod uwagę
ludzi wszystkich, także tych z potrzebami specjalnymi.
What is also important is unification of construction law, social campaigns that will sensitize society, and the city's support for non-governmental organizations that support people with disabilities. Our workshop was concerning 4 different topics based on which we will generalize or we will translate into other problems. But the main 4 topics we were mainly dealing with, it was open access to rivers for people with disabilities, green areas, accessible for people with vision impairments. Next topic was about prisoners of higher floors and people with autistic spectrum and how they deal in urban space. Now I would like to ask Ms. Ada Niedoszewska to talk about legal issues. We are not going to talk about the last issue because I will take part in this, but Ada, are you with us? Can you hear us? Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I would like just to ask because I can hear a translation, and I'm not able to speak when I hear the translation. So I am taking the headsets off and I will be speaking without headsets. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy that I can participate in such online formula. And as Barbara mentioned, I will refer to the issue of programming, legislation, so strategic approach in our country, and legal regulations in terms of accessibility in Poland. In terms of strategic context, in 2018, we have had in Poland a program called Accessibility Plus, which treats it in this issue of accessibility in a complex ways, and it shows different areas in which we should do something and in which we have challenges. For example, architecture, transportation, culture, education, health, and digitalization. I'm not going to tell you about separate issues, but I would like to tell you about the issues that, from my point of view, and after many discussions we have had during our workshops, seems to be the most important. And I will start that accessibility concerns us all.
Tej dostępności w codziennym życiu dostrzegane są przede wszystkim.
But the lack of accessibilities are, of course, visible. And people have individual needs associated with their disabilities. And this is the issue we should take into account, that we don't talk about people with disabilities, but about all people who have some form of this disability, who have some form of problem.
Hello?
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 Tak.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Tak.
Proszę mówić, teraz słychać lepiej.
So, okay, please continue. I think we have better connection now.
Okay.
So, okay, so basically, what basic issue is accessibility. It concerns all of us. The program also wants to show you two aims of this program. The first one is the lack of cohesive standards of accessibility that are present in Poland. And the second problem, the second challenge, is that people are not aware of accessibility problems in Poland. And the direction of action that was defined in the program is preparation or preparing appropriate legal frameworks. And now the legal issue in our country. Do the current regulations, are current regulations enough or not? Well, I think, in essence, the issues of accessibility in Poland are present in some places in Poland, and they are taken into consideration in some parts of Poland, in some questions. But very often, these legal regulations are very general, so they tell you about the fact that we should appropriately design the space, or there should be some conditions to use the building, for example, but they don't precise how it should be done. Therefore, that's why we don't have one standard. And this leads to the problem, because these solutions, so the people who could actually use such facilities very often have the problem. They are in one city, then they are in another city, and they have totally different solutions. They have to learn them, which is also a challenge for them. And so there is a problem with standardization. And this is the obstacle for disabled people and people with other disabilities. And the fact that we have very general legal regulations is the fact that we focus only on some disabilities and we avoid or omit the others. We forget about architectural solutions for other forms of disability. Unfortunately, we have problem with the connection, so maybe we can ask Ms. Barbara to ask another person for the presentation. But before I will ask another person, I would refer shortly to the last point, to NGO's recommendations, because this is the topic developed by Ms. Gorący. I'm sorry that I'm reading, but this is the material I got at night. One of the main rules of realizing conditions of accessibility for people with disabilities is the partnership relationship of local government with representatives of such people and social organizations. As experts. So nothing about us without us. This is the rule. We should effectively implement accessibility solutions in terms of local partnerships, so local authorities with businesses, cohesion of activities, effective communication between different people and entities engaged, space to have discussion. It is possible only when we will realize it with a partnership between local authorities, representatives of people with disabilities, and with the elderly. Detailed recommendations from the point of view of this. I'm not going now to tell you about them in detail. I will just refer to them in terms of limited access access to public space, because the lack to the access means the lack of activity, social exclusion.
Koniecznością zwrócenia uwagi na
we
to,
need to focus
that
the basic need to provide accessibility is assistance. Assistant service should be allowed, should be actually a law of every disabled person. Without assistance, without such assistance, disabled people won't be able to do it, even if they have access to green areas, but without the assistance, the majority of people with disabilities can't cope with this. Then there is a problem with accessibility to transport, public transportation. It's not only about infrastructure, but also high quality of service, information systems, and adapting the services to the needs of passengers with disabilities. People with disabilities should also have access to specialist services of public transport. And we should remember that this organization of accessible public transport is a key to including people with disability into social life. We talk about cultural exclusion also of people with disabilities, and here we have social campaigns that will sensitize society to this problem, and activities of NGOs that actually support people with disabilities. Their role is very important. And there's a slide which was prepared by Ms. Adrianna Niedoszewska. Examples. Here are examples of big cities and good solutions. And this is the response or the answer to the opening access to rivers, water for persons with disabilities. These are the solutions. So for people on wheelchairs, when there is a sand, soft ground, well, the accessibility to get there on the wheelchair is very difficult or none. So here's the slide about prisoners of higher floors, because actually people who are on wheelchairs they have actually none chance to get out of their flats if they're on the fourth floor without elevator. And the elevator should be there, but they need to be appropriately adapted. They should be appropriately controlled and accessible to people on wheelchairs. And another examples of good practices in Poland that allow people with disabilities to move freely in Poland. And now the topic about people with autism spectrum in urban space. Here also the slide that should have been presented by Ms. Niedoszewska and Małgorzata Gorący, but I would replace them now. I have to replace them now and present the slide. The problem of people with have some spectrum of autism. It concerns people and people with intellectual disabilities and children. This is the problem of whole family, because parents are worried about their children. What will happen to them if they finish education and they will stop being in school? So people need to be aware of the fact that such people exist, but from the perspective of adults with autism, well, they very often present their problems, they have their representatives. It is confirmed with the program self-advocacy. The program proves that they can present their problems well. I mean, people with autism. In this slide, people with autism need silence. Of course, it's not about being complete silence. It's not possible to provide them that, but sounds that, let's say, for people without autism are unnoticeable, are not heard, and they don't bother him or her. For people with autistic spectrum are annoying, difficult. That's why there are some silent hours in shopping centers, in public transportation. We should allow people comfort, that people should travel in silence. So we need to take into account the fact that they function among us, that they are present among us, and we need to adapt to their needs. And there is an example from small cities in Poland. In this case, Kłobuck.
To nie jest ten, to jest ten drugi. Przepraszam bardzo, ale to są znowu nie...
I'm sorry, but not my slide, so I'm a bit lost.
Nie ma Kłobucka. W Rybniku.
In Rybnik.
To jest kolejna... Tak, w Rybniku z inicjatywy stworzenia Oligos powstała edukacyjna ścieżka dla osób
an educational path on people for wheelchairs. It was made by workers of a social community. It had special barriers, and people on wheelchairs have barriers like curbs, steps. It is actually to train volunteers for people on the wheelchair. There are some lectures for children and adults, and it promotes this problem to integrate with people with disabilities and to have trainings for people with disabilities and on wheelchairs. Rybnik also has totally adapted to people with disabilities swimming pool with many different facilities to use it. In Kłobuck, another example, there is actually a project to create a system for family support, and the local authorities adapted old buildings to new activities. They also cared about environment around the building. There are special gym, open air gym, and the building was adapted to the needs of people with disabilities. It's the Center for Social Services.
Jakie są kwestie, wyzwania I bariery
so what are the issues, challenges and barriers we are dealing with in Poland? Definitely raising awareness of local community would be important through education or dissemination of good practices. We need to modernize educational facilities and venues, because if the disabled have access to education, they would have increased possibility of development, job or self-development in general. Availability of information is important, especially for the disabled from living in smaller towns or even in the countryside, because there's a problem with that in these particular places. Organization of public space, it should be accessible to everyone, as well as public transport.
Teraz bo istnieje coś takiego jak przyznawanie
we have certificates granted for certain barriers in action. So lack of knowledge in terms of new solutions that would facilitate the life of the disabled is still a problem, and sometimes a misunderstanding of their needs, or also lack of dissemination of good practices and its availability. One of the important Polish initiatives we have is the project of Integration Foundation that accredits certain solutions in different areas. So the condition for being granted this venue without barriers certificate is going through an audit performed by experts in terms of accessibility that act based on methodology resulting from 20 years of the Integration Foundation activities. So the venue or service without, so website without barriers is also granted for websites and mobile applications that would be accessible for the disabled. Such audit of digital accessibility is created so that internet is also a space without barriers. In the last 4 years, the auditors have verified over 600 websites like that in public institutions in terms of their accessibility for the disabled. And then finally, the service without barriers certificate, it's given to a company or institution as a confirmation of good or good quality service, customer service for the disabled, and also perceiving actions that would be increasing the customer service for the disabled or cancelling barriers or obstacles in this respect. Preparation of the employees of offices and customer centers is one of the elements in this, taking into account differences in communication. Now I would like to ask Oni to present the next slides.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see the slides myself, so bear with me here, but I will do my best. In Norway, we have had a different approach to accessibility, at least since 2005, where we moved on from looking at eliminating discrimination towards people with disability into a universal design, embracing human diversity in a wider sense, and to make sure that people are not excluded on different parameters. And so in Norway, universal design became a government strategy from 2005, where they at government level launched a government action plan for universal design, where universal design was a strategy to obtain a more inclusive society where everyone can participate on equal terms. And if you can see the slide, I have it on my phone here, and you can see that on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the front page of the second action plan. That was.
Just a minute. We are on the first slide. You were suggested to present limited access to public space for people with disabilities, with definition of universal design and design for human diversity.
Yes. Okay, because I can't see the presentation myself here.
Okay, so I will say something about the slide when I change it. So
okay, so thank you.
Now I am on the slide present experience and strategies in Norway. So I think you said it, you told about it already. With this picture.
Yes, well, if you are talking about limited access to public space for people with disabilities, yes, if that's the first slide, it's all about, for us, it's about moving on from looking at solving the accessibility issues and to more look at more inclusive strategies for mainstream solutions, not specialized groups. And so we are now in Norway, we are looking at more design for human diversity, design for social inclusion, and that covers not only people with disability, but older people, but also children, and people with cultural diversity, ethnic and gender, and sexual orientation. So it's about anti-discrimination. So in Norway, universal design has now been defined as the design of products and services and environments in such a way that they can be used by all people to the greatest extent possible without any special need for adaptation or specialized design. So we're talking about mainstream solutions here and not special design for special needs, which also we have experienced can be sometimes stigmatizing. You can make access, but maybe not always on equal terms. And that's why universal design is taking a bit further. So if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, okay. Next slide is this lead users and efficient tool in universal design. This is this one.
Well, if you can go back to the one with the action plan, actually, because I just wanted to say what the government, and this is across all political parties, they all agree on this strategy. And I will talk a little bit more about why this is there is such a great degree of agreement across all the political parties. But what they decided to do was to introduce from top level government to local communities and a regional level, introduce universal design as a strategy, and how to and they were also involving all ministries. It's across all sectors, both private and public. And in the beginning, there were 200 different programs and activities and measures included. And in the beginning, it was focusing on public spaces, buildings, transport, and ICT, and to ensure that infrastructure could enable equal participation. And in the program, in the action plan, there were economic measures, but more importantly, legislation was introduced, and it was also at municipal, regional, and a national level. And if you want to look more at this, you can look at the link there, and there are a lot of information in English. It's all about people. Now you can move to the next slide, please. Yes.
Okay.
So what we realized, as someone said earlier in the presentation, nothing about us without us. And that is what is my message too, and what is everybody's experience. That's what works. You have to involve people. People are experts in their own life. And designer, architects, urban designers are experts in their profession, but people needs to be engaged and involved in the process, because we cannot imagine what it's like to be you and me, and that's why co-creation or engagement and involvement in all design processes are very important, but it can also drive innovation. And we always say that if you involve lead users, that is real people, not personas or imaginative characters. If you involve a diversity of people representing different aspects, as I was talking about earlier, gender, age, abilities, life situations, then you can get a rich source of information, and they can inform you and about decisions for the process. And they can also, more importantly, identify barriers and problems and issues that you may not have seen and realized. But also they can challenge designers and architects and urban designers creatively, and also provide, of course, new insights and perspectives. And we have seen now for years on that it's also actually driving innovation. So if you can move to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just another visual of it. It's about looking at who are your clients, who are your customers, who are the users. Well, if you aim for the edge, then you will also include that able-bodied, young, strong, Caucasian, white male in the middle. Because actually the average person does not really exist. So it's about looking at human diversity when you decide. It's about us, it's not about them. It's about us at all stages of life.
Okay. Next slide.
Next, please. Yes, please. So the ministry have had and has still now they are on the third or and the second and last action plan. They move on. They build on experience. They build on the legislation and what they have achieved, and it's learning by doing. And one of the many measures that the government decided to do was to establish an innovation award for universal design to promote and to demonstrate in practice the value of a universal design approach across all sectors and design disciplines. And they did this with this prize, and for 8 categories, from product design to urban design to transport. And since 2011, when I was asked to establish this prize, this award, just to present actually the value for everyone and how what you can achieve when you have involved people in the process, when you have universal design as a requirement from the early beginning. So all these examples we have gathered since 2011 in different categories are just amazing lighthouse projects that can prove and document the actual value of applying now I see myself twice here. Can you get back to the slide? Because now I can see the slide. No, I can't see the slide. Anyway, so we can see now here a couple of winning. The last time the winner, one of the winners was something called Hamar, an activity park, which was relevant for our workshop because we were looking at how you can make outdoor spaces to enhance public health for all. And this is in Telemark, in Telemark County, where they did a project that was amazing because they involved all citizens, from the children to the people at the nursery, the older people with disabilities, the teenagers, and they all took part in building this amazing activity park, which has something to offer for all, and also is very accessible if you are dependent on wheels. It can be a mother with a trolley, but it can also be someone with a roller or wheelchairs. But there are also some amazing trails for those who used to really do biking roughly up the hills. And there's so much more. And what we see with the great solutions that are also sustainable is that this has built a community because they took part from the beginning, and they can all actually enjoy the fantastic nature that was in the beginning very inaccessible for most, unless you were very, very strong and sporty. So you can see here, it's along the water, and here we can see some of the pictures where people actually in wheelchairs can walk around or roll around the beautiful nature. The other picture is another winner of the Universal Design, which was a very sad parking lot with a very steep hill in the middle of Oslo by our old library. And it was made into an amazing park. And they made actually a pathway that was useful for people with wheelchair, but also so enjoyable for everyone, because the way they designed the solutions was that it was appealing to actually use the pathway instead of only the stairs that some of us could use, because there were flowers and plants and benches and very lovely spaces. And so that was just a few examples. But if you want to look at more of these amazing examples, there are hotels, there are trams, there are websites that are so they are so inspirational. And from the business side, some of the winners are, of course, private entrepreneurs, and their experience is that they say that, well, we did this because we wanted to be inclusive of our customers, but we didn't realize that we would save cost, we would increase our market share, and we would also have more innovative solutions at the end of the day, only because we involve people, we follow the universal design guidelines. So it's very inspirational to see what you can achieve with universal design. And these examples prove also that against all the myths and prejudice against universal design, that it doesn't cost more. Actually, it pays off. It's maybe there is an initial investment, but there are so many more unexpected benefits that you cannot foresee until you've done it. So please look up these Innovation Award for Universal Design winners. Next, please. So
okay, then I'm going to take over.
Yes, now I will leave it to you, and we will do some conclusions at the end.
So it's Buster Schütt.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to say a little bit about the experience and strategy on a municipality level. COES, the Norwegian Association for Local and Regional Authorities, has a network for universal design between municipalities and regions. We are about 62 participants that are evenly distributed between Norway, from small municipalities to large municipalities. It's a network that aims to share experience and projects with good solutions for universal design. And we try to develop projects with the focus on universal design to be a guideline for municipalities in our home regions. Also, I'm in an ambassador project with COES. We are 11 ambassadors from different municipalities, and other municipalities and regions has the possibility to ask COES if one or two ambassadors can come to their home municipalities, so we can have a day of introducing and speak about universal design and accessibility and how we can start making good projects and have a good solution for it, and start to have it all the way into the planning process. It's an ambition of increasing and disseminating knowledge to municipalities and regions around Norway. One other key points I would like to point out is the importance of mapping and collecting knowledge about your own situation in your own city or region. If you go to the next, I'm going to show you two examples of two municipalities in Norway, which are good examples for solutions. As Oni said, we were supposed to give some guidelines in different perspectives, different examples of solutions. These are two examples. The one is Riverwalk in other municipalities. It's a collaboration between Norwegian Water and Energy Department and other municipality, where a Norwegian Water Department had to upgrade the safety of the river because it was overflowing each winter. And other wanted to have a Riverwalk that was accessible for everyone, so they asked if they could do a project together. And now Oda has a Riverwalk that's accessible for everyone, and also the river is safe in the summer, springtime. The next one is the Midgard Serpent. It's a water crossing in Time municipality. It's a river crossing that's connect two trails in Big Lake on each side. And this is just a good example of how universal design is a part of the concept and part of the early planning phase, and is about how if you introduce it early on into the architects and so on, it can lead to good design for everyone. Now, Oni, we have gone over to the issues, challenges, and barriers. So you can speak about it, and then I can come in if it's necessary.
Okay. Well, there are, because as I said, there are. This has been a new field, and there has been a lot of learning by doing. And in Norway, we have some lessons, and we are readjusting. But what we see that is important is that the implementation needs to involve both private and public sector, and also, of course, education and the general public of understanding. But also the implementation of new legislation has been challenging. But one of the main issues, I think, is still to integrate universal design as part of a mainstream solution. That is, it's not about specialized design. It's the basis for what we do. And that's still something we have to work with. But we are slowly getting there. And then to do this, you need to build competence. We've been working with awareness a lot, but then it's also about competence and skills, but also about communication. Communicate the value of this approach. And then the enforcement of new legislation, because in Norway now, it's actually against the law to discriminate on disability, on gender, on age, sexual orientation, and so on. But the enforcement is sometimes also a challenge to put into action. We need to increase the focus on education in universal design, because I think universal design should be underpinning everything, because it's based on the understanding of human diversity, who we are. And that has to continue in Norway, and I think everywhere else. But it's really moving on. And this is what I see also where in the network of EIDD that I represent. But I also think that so it's about continuing the good work, but also prove and give the good examples, the documentation. It's also about money, it's about cost, so cost-benefit analysis. We have some of them in Norway, but there should be more. These are very powerful. And maybe I should leave the last points to you, Buster.
Okay. Some thing I see in my network is the size of municipalities can be a factor of how you can affect different projects and also the economy section in parts of large versus small municipalities. So it's very important that large municipalities contribute and the small municipalities can draw effect of the larger ones. And also the last point is that we need to be more and more important that we get the focus on universal design early on in the planning sessions and processes. So we can take it from the top to the bottom and out in the project.
Can I just add something, because that's so important, the last point, Gustav, because what we see with also some of the winners of the University Design Award is that those who have had university design as a contractual requirement, then it's much easier to obtain your goals, because it's already in the contract from the early beginning. So that's a good learning point we've seen.
Okay.
Should we, go to the
last one?
More last one and final stages. Well, there's a lot of text, and I think I gave you already the short version of the definition, and I'm sure you all now have a good grip on the definition of university design. So instead of reading what's on that slide, I would prefer to come with some conclusions and some recommendations based on our experience, based on also what we have discussed in our workshops in Wrocław. So, and I want to keep it short. So I made some key points. What we recommend is that, and from our experience, is that move on from accessibility to a university design perspective, because then you will ensure participating in a society on equal terms easier. And also don't focus on specialized solutions for certain groups. That can also be stigmatizing. Try an approach for mainstream solutions. University design is actually a mindset, a strategy, maybe a philosophy too, and a practice. And there are many tools and methods involved in the practice. We have in Norway for a long time experienced that what is necessary for some is better for all. And I'm sure you can agree to that. Universal design is also a sustainable strategy that benefits society, business, and the individual at the same time. So it's a win-win-win. I think it's also, and that's my experience because I'm from business, it's a very powerful tool for people-centered innovation. It can save costs, increase value creation, and effectiveness in both public and private sector. So it's actually basically about embracing human diversity and design for inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. Dziękujemy bardzo za uwagę. Mamy niewiele czasu bardzo. Jeżeli ktoś ma jakieś pytania, to bardzo proszę. Najlepiej do naszych norweskich ekspertów, ponieważ oni są dostępni.
Ask our experts from Norway.
Questions online also. Okay, if there are no questions, I would like to thank Barbara for all your work as a leader. Thank you all the experts from Poland and Norway. And let me remind you that at 2 p.m. Here we're going to start other panel dedicated to housing policy. And now you are very invited for lunch at the foyer, and all those participants who are here with us online, please take a guided virtual tour around Santonian Hall, where we are now, and maybe it will convince you to visit Wrocław if you haven't done it before. Thank you so much.